welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and it's time for another retrospective. This is my Forgotten Realms retrospective, which came out about a year ago. I like to go back and look at these sets after they've been out for about a year and see how everything is sort of shaken out, see if my and maybe other people's predictions were close to correct at the very least. And I think it's just interesting to look at the numbers. And of course, I use EDH Rec for this because it's the most accurate way that we can sort of figure out where everything is at. It's obviously never going to be completely accurate. We all know, though, like, just from playing in the format for a year. And again, even if you don't look at the actual numbers, even if you just think about the commanders that you see all the time, the cards that you see all the time, we can sort of gauge this on our own without actually using the actual numbers. But I like to use EDH Rec to look at what the actual numbers are in the format. So let's get at it. So here we are, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, and we have all the most popular commanders from the set. Volo coming in at number 1. That doesn't surprise me a whole lot. So I had him at number 4 on my list. And again, my lists aren't always, this is going to be the most popular commander. It's also, for me, I take into consideration the different ways you can build around that commander, the interesting things that you can do. Obviously, you can do a lot of interesting things here. For me, what I thought was most interesting about this commander, it is reverse tribal. It is, I want to avoid the same creature types, which I thought was a really different take for just a commander in general. So, not surprised at all. This one's at the top. Tiamat, number 2. Again, and funny enough, I just built I built this deck for my patron. The idea that I came up with where you do a changeling thing because you can search for dragons. So it comes into play. You go get your Morophon, you play your Morophon, and then your Tiamat, the Wooburg is, that part you don't have to pay because obviously you're going to pick dragon. And then you just have to pay the 2 colorless, keep bouncing your commander back to your hand, right? And as I just talked about in my best cards from Exodus, cards like Erratic Portal, right? This is what I'm talking about with those commanders that they have cast triggers, so you want to return them to your hand so you can cast them again. So that's a great card there. And then what you do is you keep just tutoring every single turn, and you go get changeling cards like Crib Swap and Nameless Inversion, and there's lots of changeling stuff. I mean, you can get dragons as well, but you can get the changelings also, which is very interesting. And that's how I ended up building that deck for a patron. And then a year later, funny enough, that the set's been out for a year, he wanted me to do sort of a revision on it. So I did a deck doctor on it as well. As a 5-color commander, for a long time, the 5-color commanders from every set were like the most popular ones because 5-color commanders just tend to be really popular. But, and I talked about this in the last one as well, about how the 5-color commanders, because they printed so many fantastic 5-color commanders in like a 2-year period, that, now when they print a 5-color commander, it's like, yeah, it's okay. People use it for what it's actually intended for rather than just a good stuff 5-color commander, because there's so many good stuff 5-color commanders in the format already that there's no reason for people to do that anymore. So if you're going to build a Tiamat deck, you're probably building it for what it actually was intended, right? Xanathar coming in number 3, that's pretty surprising. And by the way, when I say number 3, I'm going to go over to the Forgotten Realms Commanders stuff as well, for which there is quite a bit. So this is number 3 in the main set. I imagine if you include the Forgotten Realms Commander, it's going to be way down there because 1,300 decks is not a ton. That is, I mean, it's good. It is a commander you're going to see from time to time, but that's not a lot, right? There's a pretty big drop off here in the top 3. This to me, I don't think I had this on my top 10 list, and the reason why is because it's one of those commanders that it's like Send Triplets. It's very comparable to Send Triplets, where you are just kind of doing the stuff. And I know there's a lot of people that like that, and clearly those are the people that built this deck. But man, people just hate that stuff. They hate you playing their deck, stealing their stuff, using their stuff. People just really, really don't like that. And then on top of that, there's, that player can't cast spells and stuff too. So this is probably more popular than I thought it would be. Again, I think that there are definitely those people there that like doing that stuff, that like stealing stuff, playing their opponent's stuff. I didn't think there would be this many. I'm surprised this is number 3 from the set. I thought Trelasara Moondancer would be higher. I liked this one because even though it might seem a little one dimensional, you're actually doing quite a bit, right? It is a life gain theme and also a +1/+1 counter theme. We haven't really seen that combination. And then you also have the Scry 1, which I thought was significant as well. And you want instances of life gain, so you want this trigger to be happening as much as you possibly can, right? I like the combination there. I thought it was a neat idea to combine the life gain with the counters, and then also throw the Scry 1 in there as well, which you could definitely use. I mean, if you have a Soul Warden in play, you're getting those life gain triggers all the time, so you can very easily scry through your deck to get something like put miracle cards in there. So it would be really easy for you to set up the top of your library because you're scrying all the time as well. Oswald Fiddlebender, and this was the one that I had at number one, and I'm pretty surprised it's not more popular. It is mono white. I just thought there was so much things you could do here. It's a birthing pod for artifacts. For me, this one looks like people just were nothing really stuck immediately. I mean, over 1,000 decks, that's pretty good for sure. I thought it would be more popular than this though because of the combo potential. I mean, there's got to be a lot of combos that you can assemble together. There's got to be a lot of, I mean, there's just so many things you can do here because you're searching for any number of art, right? And you can start doing the untapping thing. 1,000 Year Elixir would be one of the first things I grab with Oswald Fiddlebender, and then you can easily untap it, use it again. You can also do the I sacrifice my artifacts theme so I can get them back. A Tashar would work great in this deck, I think, because you're doing a little bit of artifact recursion here as well. I mean, I guess 1,000 decks is pretty good. 1,000, 1,100. That's actually pretty good. I imagine this number probably has gone down a little bit since probably in the last few months, just because white has gotten a lot of really, really great commanders. By the way, while we're on the subject, the two most popular commanders in the entire format now for mono white are ones that just came out recently. So it's Giada from New Capenna is now the number one mono white commander. What? And then Light Pause is number two. So the last couple sets, those are the two most popular mono white commanders. So, there's also that. I think people are also, how many people are going to have more than one mono white deck? Me and not a lot of other people, right? So that also plays into it a little bit. So one more deck here, or one more commander with over 1,000 decks. Minsk Beloved Ranger. And again, I thought this one was interesting. There is a few things you could do with it. If you, and obviously the flavor here is I create the hamster and I throw it at my opponents, right? I thought it was interesting. I mean, yeah, you can do that. So you are in a bit of a token theme here, which is interesting. Also, though, I thought it was interesting if you just ignore that and use this ability on, there's lots of other great creatures out there that you can be using this ability on, right? Target creature you control has base power and toughness XX and becomes a giant in addition to its other types. A lot of creatures out there that you can be using on this ability. So this is, to me, this is a commander that, yeah, it's not super powerful, but it's very versatile in the directions that you can go with it. And I think that's why it does have over 1,000 decks. This one is surprising. Delina Wildmage. It's one of those dice rolling commanders that I did not think was going to be very popular at all. This would be for sure the most popular dice rolling commander, and I think the reason why is because there's not really any downside here, right? This is basically, and I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't love the dice rolling. A lot of people didn't. I actually heard a few people that when this set came out were like, some of my patrons included, that were like, yeah, I'm going to take a break from Magic for a while because they really did not like this. The dungeon mechanic again, which we'll get to, and the dice rolling. I didn't think any of the dungeon commanders or the dice rolling commanders were going to be very popular. I'm surprised how popular this one is. Again, though, because this is all upside, right? You're going to either create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of a creature, which is great. That's easy to build around. And if you roll really high, you can create one of those tokens and roll again, which is going to be creating two of those tokens. So it's, you can very easily build around this 1 to 14 option, and then if you get to the 15 to 20, just get an extra copy. So there isn't a whole lot of randomness here, which is kind of like, to me, it's like, okay, that's good, but it almost defeats the purpose of the dice rolling for me. Like, you have a D20. The reason I don't like D20, and I was going to talk about this in the video when I first reviewed the set, but I was kind of being negative, and I try not to be too negative when sets came out. I did the same thing with Baldur's Gate, which, by the way, a lot of these commanders now might need to revisit the dice rolling and the dungeon commanders, because now we have a whole bunch of new stuff that can be used for it, right? What I was going to say is D20 rolling. If you play D&D like I do, D20 rolling is perfect for it. All right. And in fact, it's referred to as the D20 system. The way they did Dungeons and Dragons in third edition. I used to play second edition, which was a lot different. When they did the third edition, they actually came up with the D20 system, which is basically the whole entire game revolves around D20. I won't nerd out on it too much, but the D20 was really, really important, and having a number all the way from 1 to 20 really, really mattered. Here it doesn't. You only have two options, right? And I understand that the numbers do matter somewhat, but essentially you could flip a coin here, right? You don't need a D20. You could use a D6 or a D whatever, right? So I just didn't love that they were introducing the D20 when you really didn't need a D20, right? They were just doing it for flavor, essentially. I thought, I don't know, but yeah, this is a commander. I'll be honest, I didn't give it much of a look because I just didn't like the D20 stuff. It's very similar to Rionia, I think, right? Because Rionia is also creating a mono red commander that's creating token copies of stuff, so they probably go in each other's decks, I imagine. Clean Reclusive Painter. This one is definitely, I'm surprised it's this high because it is so minimal. Like Rakdos again, and I talk about this with another commander when I will get to it, because I will be talking about it. Rakdos just isn't very popular color combination in the format in general. So that already, like whenever you have certain color combinations with commanders, like Simic, right? Simic is a really popular color combination. People like those colors. If I build around Volo, yes, I'm going to be building around my commander, but I also get access to ramp because I'm in green. I get great card draw options. I get counter spells, right? If I'm in Rakdos, I don't get any of that. I don't get counter spells. I don't get ramp, really. I don't really get it, right? So you're already, it's already going to make you a less popular commander if you're in the colors that people don't really go after. So, and Rakdos are just not those colors that everyone goes after. They have different, I would say there's some drawbacks here for sure. There's a lot of things that Rakdos can't do. Dealing with enchantments is a tough one for sure. And this ability is just, it enters the battlefield and you create a treasure. Okay, you can't get much more minimal than that. That's not very impactful. Other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each mana of so now you have to create a bunch of treasures in order to cast your creatures. Creating treasures is kind of good anyway, and there is a lot of support for this now. At the time, there wasn't a ton. There's way more now. I don't know if this commander's gotten more popular recently. But the payoff is your creatures getting a +1/+1 counter on them. That's okay, right? Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything great in Rakdos. Let's click on this guy. Why not, right? And see if there's any. We got treasure making stuff. Sure. Yeah, lots of treasure. Like, again, all this stuff came out in like the last year. But that's all you're doing, right? You're not really like, okay, Jury, there's a creature I actually want to put counters on, right? Because that's kind of what you're building around. If I'm just playing ordinary, like I'm just playing my Mayhem Devil, just so I can put a counter on it, why do I care about that? Obviously the Mayhem Devil's in there for the sacrificing part, but now you're just making a treasure deck. You don't care about, right? So for me, you could easily make a black-red. Here's this guy, Mahadi. This guy is just a better, if you're just going to do Rakdos treasures, this guy's way better, right? Why am I doing Kalain? The only reason I'm doing Kalain is because I want that +1/+1 counter, and I'm just not seeing anything here that cares about +1/+1 counters. Other than the obvious, my 1/1 is now a 2/2. I don't see, right? Fane is great, of course, because Fane's great in every deck, pretty much. Again, this is all, I'm looking at this and it's all just treasure stuff. And I built a deck. I built a Rakdos deck. It was a Togo and Keskit deck. That was a Rakdos, and this is before we had any Rakdos treasure commanders. And that's essentially what that was. I was sacrificing artifacts to Keskit's ability, and I also had my, again. So I just think if you're just going to build a treasure deck, which is what most people, it looks like they're doing here, why use Kalain at all? It only gives you one treasure. There's probably better options. I only see a couple of cards in here that actually care about the +1/+1 counter thing. By the way, I don't see any Persist, which would be, I think, the best. Like Blood Tracker, there's one. or maybe two. So there's a couple like Dreadhorde Butcher. There's a few, not much. I mean, I'm not saying it's. I'm not trying to poo poo all over this commander here, but I'm just saying I'm surprised it's as popular it is, given how minimal the the payoff is for it. Right? It's very minimal. You only get one treasure off your commander. Yeah, I'm surprised it's that popular. That's all I'm saying. I'm also really surprised how popular this one is, because it is whenever you roll one or more dice. And when this commander came out, there was only the dice rolling stuff from this set. I think I did a quick search. There was like 7 cards in red and blue that were rolling dice. That is all. So, and obviously, again, now it's gotten a lot better. So I don't know how much this has changed in the past few weeks, because now we have a whole bunch more stuff from Baldur's Gate. But at the time, that there just wasn't enough support to actually build a deck with this. So surprised it's that popular. Drizzt Do'Urden. I like this one. This is about where I would say it should be. I think I had this on my list. It was like number 8 or 9 or something. It's you have a couple. Again, there's a little bit you can build around here. Ultimately, you're in a bit of a Voltron strategy, right? Because that's sort of what you're going with your commander, double strike, and you're making it bigger. You are in a +1/+1 counter theme. You are in a token theme a little bit. You even could do a blink, and not blink's not great though. I mean, you can blinks because your Drizzt Do'Urden will give you another Guinevere, right? But then you lose the counters, so I don't know if that's great. But I really like the idea of just whenever a creature dies, right? There's a lot of things you can do there. You can just sacrifice your own creatures. Friction Dreadnought's a perfect fit in this deck, obviously. It is also a very iconic character, though. I think a lot of people might have, like, I know my brother read all the books. He loves Drizzt Do'Urden. It's his favorite character. So there might be a lot of people just building this deck just because they love Drizzt Do'Urden. There's a little bit of that as well, right? And I guess might come into question with some of these others. I don't know. This one for sure, super iconic character. Inferno of the Star Mounts. Man, I have a patron with this deck. I did a deck doctor on it. It is a tough one. And I literally just played against him like last week against this deck. And man, this ability is so tough. I think people like the idea of doing 20 damage to, going face with 20 damage. The problem, and here's what he ran into. Again, for anyone who doesn't realize that this is an issue, if you get higher than 20, right? Inferno of the Star Mounts gets +1/+1 to land a turn. When its power becomes 20 this way, it deals 20 damage to any target. If your Inferno of the Star Mounts gets a higher than 20 power, you can't activate this ability because you have to get lower now, right? And that's the issue he ran into. He actually got this thing's power up above 20. It was like a 21. And then he couldn't use the 20 damage because it has to be exactly 20. And you have to use the 20. Or maybe he was exactly at 20, but you have to get to 20 with this ability. You can't get to 20 any other way. You have to be at like 19 and then you activate this ability and it goes to 20 because it's when its power becomes 20 this way. So that's actually very limiting. It's a tough one. It's a tough one for sure. I'm surprised it's this popular. Gretchen Titchwillow. Hey, look, and by the way, I like to look at the drop off. We got a pretty steep drop off in the front. I mean, this is not too bad. Then it really starts to drop off here. We go from 1,000 and that gets cut in half, and then it really starts to drop off, right? So we're going here at Minsk is number what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then by the time we get to 10, we're at 570, and now we're way down to 3. So now we're into the, again, in front of the Star Mounts. I'm surprised it's got this many decks, but it's still not very popular at all, right? These are commanders that you are not going to see hardly ever. Gretchen Titchwillow, just another Simic card draw, land ramp. Yay, right? Again, when I saw this card, I was like, wow, I'm surprised they even made that. It's just another Simic card draw ramp option. So, but there's a few people out there using it. Krydle I really liked. I thought it was interesting. Again, I thought there was a lot you could, because there's so much going on here, right? When it deals combat damage, so you want your commander to deal combat damage, lose life. It mills a card, which you can use that, do a lot of stuff with that. You're gaining life. Again, this is a Dimir commander that's gaining life. So Witch of the Moors, there are cards like that care about you gaining life. You're also scrying, and you can also make a creature unblockable, which there's a ton you can do there, right? So I'm surprised this guy isn't more popular. I think, and he's a rogue, so you could do a little bit of rogue tribal, but I guess that space is a little bit crowded right now. I just thought, man, there's so many interesting creatures you want to be dealing damage with. That's right. This is whenever you attack. So essentially, every time you attack, pay two and make that creature unblockable. Seems pretty good. Grazlax was another one. I just, again, I thought, whenever I deal damage, I get to draw a card is great. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you just get to return it to your hand. So it's funny, these guys actually are in a very similar space, Krydle and Grazlax. I did a Grazlax Mono Blue Ninjas deck on my channel, which now has more ninjas because of Neon Dynasty. There wasn't a ton at the time. There was only about 8 or 10 or something. Now you got a bunch more. I thought it was I thought it worked great with ninjutsu. I think that like his ability is perfect for ninjutsu. You're getting in for damage, you get to draw a card. Also, if my ninja becomes blocked, I can return it to my hand so that I can ninjutsu it out again. I mean, how perfect is that, right? I mean, it goes in ninja decks for sure. By the way, Krydle also works with ninjas. You could also, right, if you don't want to be their Yuriko, if you have a really cool Dimir ninjas deck and you don't want Yuriko because Yuriko is just going to draw a bunch of hate, Krydle is that's a great commander to pilot that deck, I think. Nadar. So here's our first dungeon commander. And it's mono white, so that's not helping out. And the payoff is not great either. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon. So gotta wait a while before you can complete that dungeon, and when you finally do, you get an Anthem effect. Woohoo, right? Also, your commander has to be on the battlefield. As soon as your commander dies, then the Anthem effect goes away. I mean, I'm surprised it has this many decks, and it's mono white. Like, there's a lot going against this guy. 262, yeah. So again, for me, I predicted all the dungeon commanders would not be very popular, and this is the most popular one. Of course, we do have to get to the commander one, which I think will be, I know for sure one, right? Old Gnawbone, yeah. I mean, a lot of people said, why did they do this in green? Yeah, I don't know. And it's funny when Bootlegger Stash came out and everyone was like, why are they doing that in green? They should have gave it to another color. Yeah, but look at Old Gnawbone. That Old Gnawbone is creating a bunch of treasure tokens, and guess what? Nobody cared. Nobody's building this deck because green already ramps really well. Green doesn't need treasure tokens. Everyone is so on about treasure tokens. It's temporary ramp, right? Why would you want a treasure token when you can get Rapid Growth or Sky Shroud Claim or like my old Gnawbone's in play, and I cast Traverse the Outlands, right? And I go get 7 basic lands and put them into play. Which one's better? Or I attack and get 7 treasure tokens, right? So green already has lots of ramp options. What it doesn't have, and what I imagine I would want to do if I built an old Gnawbone deck, I'm not doing the treasures for mana because green can do mana. I'm doing the treasures I'm creating a bunch of artifact tokens that I can use for something else, which green doesn't do very well, right? So that's why, again, just like with Bootlegger Stash, it's not, people are like, why give this to green? Well, green, it's not helping green because green already does it even better. Ramp is better than treasure tokens, right? So, I'm not surprised at all this guy's unpopular. Not surprised at all Asmodeus is unpopular. Lot of buzz about this guy. I think I talked about him in my overhyped one because you see this and you immediately go to the Necropotent. Like, this is sort of copying the Necropotence ability, and that's what everyone thinks of. Oh my god, it's Necropotence on a commander. No, it's not at all, right? He costs 6, right? If Necropotence costs 6, it wouldn't be nearly as good. It'd still be really good, but it wouldn't be nearly as good if it cost 6, right? Also, if you would draw a card, exile the top card of your library face down instead. And so, as I pointed out, somebody wheels, you don't get to draw nothing. Your hand is empty, right? That can be a huge downside. This is like having, giving your opponent a hull breacher or something, right? Or a notion thief, right? Somebody wheels, you do not draw any cards. They all get exiled. And then if someone kills your commander, you have nothing. All the cards exiled are gone. This is return all cards exiled with Asmodeus, the Archfiend, to owner's hand, and you lose that much life. So that means whenever a card is referring directly to itself, that means this actual card. If your commander dies and then you cast it again, whatever cards were already exiled are long gone. You can't get them back. So, yeah, I mean, 4 mana, this is what? I pay 3 black, draw 7 cards. They all get exiled. Then I pay 1 black to get. So 4 mana, I get 7 cards. Is pretty good. It's pretty good. But 6 mana, it's. I mean, this might be a good commander for like. I don't think I would build around this guy at all. This might be a good commander for just a mono black good stuff deck, because later in the game you can cast your commander and just use it to draw a ton of cards, right? Just 4 mana, I draw a ton of cards. If you got an Urborg and a Coffers in play already, you can cast your commander and then you can just go nuts drawing a bunch of cards. You also lose the life, so you got to be careful there. Yeah, I mean, just not very popular, as I suspected. I can't believe Orcus has this as many decks. I did this guy on my Underwhelming Commander series. Man, he is so underwhelming because they handicap this ability so bad. It's an enter the battlefield, okay, but it has an X. So you can't do any blinking here, right? If you blink it, X is 0, so each other creature gets -0 until end of turn. That does nothing. Return up to 0 target creature cards with total amount, right? So the fact that they put double X, like obviously the second ability is probably the one you're going to build around. The fact that they put the double X there, right? If it only had been return like Nethroi, return total mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield, it'd be a lot easier because then you could put a bunch of 0 drops like Ornithopters and stuff in there, and you could blink your commander and get the Ornithopters back. And the Memnite and the whatever. You can get a bunch of 0s, but it is X target creatures, so that means X has to be at least 1 or you get nothing. And if X is 1, so now I'm paying 5 mana for my commander to get 1 target creature out of my graveyard with total mana value 1. It's a really hard one to build around, really hard. Again, ritual effects. Was my suggestion is you have that big, like I cast a mana geyser and then I have like 12 mana, cast my commander for, whatever, 8, right? Get 8 target creatures with total mana value 8, but then again, I'm probably not going to get 8 creatures. What am I going to get? 8 1-drops? Because it's total mana value X. So, I mean, they're really, really handicapping you here. So I can get like 2 4 mana value creatures, which is not super great either. Yeah, surprised this guy has so many. I mean, again, I don't want to crap on anyone's favorite commander here, but I mean, if you made an interesting deck with this, great. That's awesome. It's just it's a difficult one for sure. Underwhelming commanders, like we're in the underwhelming commanders zone here for sure right now. And again, I mean, you can just look at how many decks they have. We're down to like 200 and less. Hama Pashar, and again, this one, again, I'm surprised it has 200 decks. Maybe, again, I don't know how much this has been impacted by Baldur's Gate yet, because you just didn't have enough. There just wasn't enough venture, because your commander doesn't venture into the dungeon. This is just room abilities of dungeons you own trigger an additional time. So you couldn't even venture into the dungeon with your commander. You had to put a whole bunch of you had to put Nadar or whoever in your deck. And I just didn't think there was enough to actually make it a viable deck even, which is, again, I was surprised they did this. I didn't think it was viable as a commander at all, because I just didn't think there was enough, right? And you didn't have a ton of options for tutoring for them either. So now, though, might be enough to make it actually worth your while, because your commander does literal nothing if you can't venture into the dungeon. It's a 3 mana 2/3 if you can't venture in, if you don't have something that's venturing into the dungeon. And again, the venture into the dungeon is not a huge payoff either. Like, what do you, scry 1 or something? So now I'm going to scry 1 twice. Woohoo. Yeah, like all those hoops I had to jump through just so I could scry 1 twice, or create 2, zombie tokens, or draw 2 cards maybe is the best case scenario. Like, just didn't seem like the payoff would be worth all the hoops you had to jump through. Targnar, Demon Fang Null. This probably would have been my the bottom of this list actually surprises me way more than the top. This guy, if I had to pick the worst commander from the set, this might be it. Actually, this is number 2. This is second from the bottom for me, I think. I mean, man, I talk about no payoff. I guess it's a 2 mana commander. I've been had people telling me lately that, oh, well, I like this commander because it's just only 2 mana. Like Kalane, maybe that it plays into it too. I mean, so what? What are you playing? Tiny leaders? Like, I don't. Why does that matter that your commander's 2 mana if what you're getting out of it is not very good, right? Whenever Targnar Demon Fang Null attacks, if you attacked with creatures total POW Total power 6 or greater this combat. Attacking. Again, like you have to jump through so many hoops. You have to get creatures with total power 6 or greater. I mean, that's not that hard. But the payoff is I get +1/+0 until end of turn. That's such a that is so mild. That's incredibly mild. I mean, you would have to go in a really go wide strategy to make that worth it, right? Obviously, if you're attacking with a 6 power creature, now it's a 7/6. If you attack with a whole bunch, like I don't know, maybe you could do Saproling Tribal or something with this, where I have a bunch of 1/1 Saprolings, and I have 6 of them attacking, and then now they all become 2/1s, right? So you're getting more power out of it the wider you go. And then the last ability, double Targnar's power and toughness until end of turn. Okay, but now I'm in a little bit of a Voltron strategy too. So you're in a go wide strategy and a Voltron strategy. Not a great combination. I mean, not sure what people are doing here with this deck, but again, if I'm in Gruul, I got about 1,000 better options for either of those strategies. I got way better options. So for me, this is right near the bottom. As far as commanders that get me excited, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about these commanders with regards to whether or not I think they're necessarily playable or anything. To get me excited to actually build around it, nothing about this guy gets me excited to want to build around this. For me personally, anyway. Vera's Silvery Moon Ranger did this on my Underwhelming Commander series. The only dungeon commander that I did. This is my favorite of the dungeon commanders. If I was going to build a dungeon deck, it would be this guy. I like the art, first of all. Also, whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, venture into the dungeon. This ability triggers only once each turn, but you can obviously cast, and that's what I did. I put stuff in here so you can cast it on other people's turns, right? And again, the venture mechanic, I didn't like the whole dungeon idea in general. And I know, and like I said, they just created this new card type, and people are like, it's not actually a card type. Yeah, but it is. I mean, it's not an actual card type, but when you have cards referring to it, I mean, I have a card here that is referring to dungeons on it. As a new player, what am I supposed to, what does that mean? What does venture into the dungeon? And in order to explain to me what it is, you need the card, right? And unless you have all of the dungeons committed to memory, you actually need the card in order to play it. In order to play dungeons, you actually need the physical card to know what you're doing. So, I mean, they really did create a new card. I mean, it's not an actual card type, but they did create something new there that I really didn't love that. But also, the payoff's not great. The payoff for completing dungeons is not great. The payoff inside the dungeon, again, it's just minimal stuff. So I'm going to go through, again, I'm jumping through a lot of hoops to cast a creature on my opponent's turn so that I can maybe create a token or something. I mean, the payoff's not great there. And then again, whenever you complete a dungeon, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. So that's, again, I go through all the trouble completing a dungeon, and then I get a 2/2 wolf. I don't love it. I mean, here we go. Barrow Clan, like all of these dungeon commanders are all towards the bottom. Shocking. I mean, who's surprised? I'm not. It's just the payoff's not there. Like this again. This Barrowan is another one that I thought maybe people might go after this. It's Orzhov Recursion, so there's a lot you can do there. When he enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon, and obviously in black and white you can do the blinking thing. Here you don't have any restrictions there. You can just blink your commander every turn, put a Conjurer's Closet or a Teleportation Circle, which came out in this set, right? To blink your commander every turn, and when it does, when Barrowan of Clan Undar attacks, return up to one target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield if you've completed a dungeon. So, again, they just put too many. I don't know. It's almost like they didn't want people to play the dungeon commanders because they put so many restrictions on them. Venturing into the dungeon is not that powerful of an ability. I guess maybe they thought it was. So this guy's going to enter the battlefield and you venture into the dungeon. That's it. And now you need a whole bunch more venture into the dungeon stuff in order to complete a dungeon. And then once you've completed a dungeon, now you have to attack with your commander in order to get a mana value 3 creature out of your graveyard. Again, that's not a great payoff for all of the work you're putting in, right? So it's not surprised this one guy's towards the bottom. Zalto Fire Giant Duke, I thought was the easiest one to, again, I even put this on my why are these so unpopular video, I believe. Because this one I thought would be one of the actual, if you're going to build a dungeon deck, this is a super easy one to do. I mean, you got a commander that is a 7/3 trample. That's not bad. Whenever it's dealt damage, venture into the dungeon. That's like the easiest thing in the world to do, right? In red, right? I got a Pyrohemia. I put 1 mana into it. I venture into the dungeon. Then I can put another. Like, if you're worried about killing your commander, you just wait till the next person's turn. 1 mana into your Pyrohemia, venture into the dungeon, and then the next turn, and then the next. Right? You can have a bunch of pingers in the deck. I ping my own commander, venture into the dungeon, right? So this is one I thought maybe people would go after, but again, dungeon commanders are all towards the bottom. I'm not entirely surprised about that, right? The Tarask. I have a patron with this deck, and he beat me with it. They won the one thing that really, I think everyone agrees they missed the ball with. The Tarask, by the way, is this legendarily hard to kill. Like originally, it was incredibly difficult to kill. It was sort of like even like slaying a dragon in D&D. It's even above that. It's like slay the dragon, slay the Tarask is even more epic of an accomplishment because it's so hard to kill. They did give it the ward 10, which pretty much means it has hexproof. Only if it was cast though, which I mean, don't got a lot of green or recursion anyway, so I guess you could cheat it into play. Although if it was your commander, you couldn't really do that. So the one big miss here is they didn't give it trample. I don't know why. That like why wouldn't you give it like it's enormous? It's crushing houses with its feet. What like again flavor wise? That's a big miss. This thing has trample. Come on, it's got trample. It's trampling on stuff, literally, right? But giving it haste though, again, haste over trample seems weird. I don't understand that. This should have been. It has trample and ward 10 if you cast it. Whenever it attacks, though, this ability though is great, man. Whenever it attacks, it fights target creature defending. This is just a removal on your commander, which is great. I say the same thing about Kogla. In green, that's really important. Having creature removal on your commander is, yeah. I actually lost to this commander, so I can't talk too much crap about it. Imrith Desert Doom. I can't believe this. Like, this guy, it's such an interesting commander. You have the possibility to draw 3 cards when you connect with it. Is below Targnar and Hamapashar and Orcus. Wow. Like, it's almost the worst. I thought this was an interesting one. Has Ward 4 as long as it's untapped. Like I did this on my Underwhelming Commander Series 2, I believe. And I just thought there was a lot of neat, like you could do a discard theme, like Mind Over Matter, which again, I talked about in my, that was in my Exodus one as well, right? What a fantastic card in this deck because I attack and then I pitch a card with my Mind Over Matter to untap my commander so that so it now has the ward 4 again, right? So if my opponent goes to remove it, I can pitch a card, untap it. It has the ward 4. They have to pay the 4 if they can. It fizzles, right? And then I don't care that I'm throwing my hand away because I keep refilling it. Not refilling it, but drawing 3 cards, right? If you're not refilling your hand, that's not the end of the world. You're drawing 3 cards. I mean, if your commander says when your commander deals combat damage to a player, draw 3 cards, that's amazing. And that's essentially what this guy says. Man, I already have 2 mono blue decks. I can't do another one. Pretty good though. This guy's great. I can't. I'm surprised he's so low. I mean, these monocolored dragons, I guess, are all at the bottom. Yeah, these guys, they're okay. Like Ebb and Death, it's you can cast it from your graveyard. Yeah, if a creature not named Ebb and Death. I mean, it has this. This is a great ability. This guy goes in the 99 of a lot of decks. A lot of decks where you are doing recursion, I cast stuff from my graveyard. I have creatures dying all the time because constantly being able to flash a 5/2 flying creature into play, right? All you have to have is a creature that died this turn, right? If a creature not named Evan Death died this turn from your graveyard, any creature, it can be your opponent's creatures. It's really easy to get this guy to the graveyard. Now, of course, he enters the battlefield tapped, so there's no surprise blocks or anything like that. Although you could easily put an Amulet of Vigor in this deck to get around that. Yeah, it's just not like I look at this and I go, okay, but I mean it's good ability, but the payoff is I got a 5/2 flyer that enters the battlefield tapped, and they're like, what are you going to do with that? There might be some combos here, I don't know. I think that ultimately just a not super overwhelming commander that recurs itself is just okay. And then Icing Death, Frost Tyrant. I just seriously, I'm the guy that looks at these and goes, "Oh, what interesting things can I do here?" I couldn't come up with nothing. Nothing. I can't believe there's 36 decks. This is so again, they really handicapped this guy to the point where you can't do anything with him. So you cast your commander, it dies, and you get a and what's the big payoff for having your commander die? You get a legendary equipment called Frost Tongue. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and when this creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. Woohoo. That should be when equipped creature attacks, exile target creature. That would be worth building around, right? Even if it said that, even if this said whenever equipped creature attacks, exile target creature defending player controls, it still would be probably the least popular from the set, I think, or definitely towards the bottom. This is one. Not surprised at all that it's the last. This would have been my pick for the worst to build around. There's just nothing you can do here. There's not anything you do isn't worth the payoff, right? Again, I'm creating an equipment that I can then what? Am I going to do an equipment deck? I'm sacrificing my commander just so I can make a very underwhelming equipment. I can just put a bunch of equipment in my deck. If I want to do an equipment deck, that's super easy to do, and there's way better commanders, right? I'm surprised this guy has as many decks as he does. Really surprised. Are people doing mono white dragons with this? Maybe. For me, this guy's at the bottom. Targnar is probably second from the bottom. I'm surprised he's that popular. But there's and then any of the like if any of the dungeon commanders were at the bottom, it wouldn't have surprised me at all. Yeah, not a lot of big surprises there, except again maybe the dice rolling, especially this one because Farida. There just wasn't a lot of support there. Again, if you're doing dice rolling and your commander doesn't actually roll dice, just like with Hama, Pashar, if you're doing dungeons and your commander doesn't actually venture into the dungeon, now you're sort of putting yourself in a box right out of the gate, right? So, yeah. Moving on to the 99, and I gotta speed it up here because I still have to get to the Forgotten Realms commander. Wow, the most popular card from this set, which I guess was just reprinted in Baldur's Gate, is Deadly Dispute. Wow, I mean, again, this is one of those incredibly. If you want to sacrifice creatures, okay, I think there's better options here. Like again, Culling the Weak, you get 4 mana. What else is better than this? I mean, there's a million cards that do this. I think that they just tacked on the treasure token, right? So now I mean, even Night's Whisper is 2 mana, draw 2 cards, and I don't have to sack the creature. But I guess if you're in a sacrifice theme, you can also sacrifice an artifact or creature. So, yeah, I mean, for me, again, I'll say it for the millionth time. This is so minimal. This is incredibly minimal. If you want spells that are going to be sacrificing your creatures, okay, I hope nobody's putting this in their deck to draw cards. This is like drawing 2 cards is so minimal, and you're sacrificing something you already have in play. So you're up a treasure token. That's all. Because Deadly Dispute is a card in your hand. If you have 7 cards in hand and you cast Deadly Dispute, you now have 6 cards in your hand. You will draw 2 cards. You now have 8. So you're only actually up 1 card, and you sacrifice something in play. So you're not really up anything except the treasure token, which that's fine. But this is Commander, guys. You're like, this is such a minimal play that when like I'm taking up a space in the 99 of my deck for a card that is doing almost no impact at all. I suppose again, if you're in a treasure theme in black, it could be a good fit. I'm really surprised this has this 37,000 decks. Wow. Treasure Vault I thought would be the most popular one from the set. You just throw this. Everyone likes treasure tokens. You can throw this card in any deck, and just later in the game, sacrifice to create a bunch of treasure tokens, even if you're not in a treasure theme at all. I mean, this goes in all of the treasure theme decks, and then on top of that, you could just throw it in any deck just as a mana, almost like a ritual effect later in the game. If I have to like cast my commander, which died like 6 times. Again, another one of these cards, which is very similar, right? So instead of now, this one costs 4. I mean, it's instant speed, but as there is 80 million red cards that do this similar effect. discard a card, 4 mana, draw 2 cards, create 2 treasure tokens. I don't know. I mean, I really think that people are putting too much emphasis on the treasure tokens here, like they do with almost every treasure token card. Like the top three. Oh, actually, this is funny. The top 4 cards on in from this set are all have to do with treasure tokens. I think I've made my point. Yeah. Treasure token, treasure token, treasure token. Like I just think people are too on about the treasure tokens. Really, I really am. I've been saying it for a while. There's a lot of great treasure token stuff. None, I don't know if these are them, right? I mean, treasure vault. Like I said, you could put treasure vault in any deck. It's okay. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the most popular card from the set. Um, but I didn't have any of these cards in my top 10. Not even close. Uh, Circle of Dreams Druid, I did because I thought that would be going on a lot of decks. Again, if I mean, you just look at these 2 cards here. Um, Old Gnawbone is in more decks than Circle of Dreams Druid. Really, as a green card that is giving you like this guy costs 7. This guy costs 3. Like, when do you want your ramp? Do you want your ramp earlier in the game or do you want it later in the game? You probably want it earlier in the game, right? I don't think I want like turn 7. I play this guy, and it's like, okay, well, I already got lots of mana. Creating those treasure tokens, and I mean, I guess it depends what other colors you have, but in a green deck, creating a bunch of treasure tokens just seems okay. This seems like a way better option for I need lots of mana right now. For me, I mean, they're obviously about the same, but still, I'm surprised that this guy's not in more decks than Old Gnawbone. I mean, I guess you could very easily slot Old Gnawbone into any green deck that is already doing the ideal combat damage all the time thing. So there is probably a lot of those. So yeah, maybe that's probably more accurate. So I had Zorn. Wow, wizard class. People really like the no maximum hand size thing, eh? Um, as someone who just played a game with I need it in my Gerard deck. I just played a game with my patrons with my Gerard deck, and I discarded a hand size a couple of times because I draw a ton of cards. Right in my Boros deck, I draw a ton of cards, and I was discarding the hand size quite a bit. Uh, when it becomes level 2, draw 2 cards, so it's a divination. Whenever you draw a card, yeah, that's okay. I mean, the level 3 is pretty good. Whenever you draw a card, put +1 counter on target creature you control. But that's a lot of mana. That's 3, then 5. 5's a lot. I mean, there are some way better classes than the wizard class, I think. Like Claire class, I think well, I mean, that goes in all the life gain decks. This goes in, yeah. This one's not as specific. I guess it goes in a deck where you have lots of draw triggers, but you're not going to get anything until you get up to. Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe I want this in my rain deck, actually. Zorn, yes. Again, this is just a card that will be, just like with Academy Manufactor and Modern Horizons 2, this is a card that will just become more and more and more and more popular as the game goes on, because they're just going to keep... like I said when I did it, with both Academy Manufactor and this card, as the years go by, they're just going to print more and more treasure stuff. They're going to print more commanders that do treasures, and this guy's going to become more and more popular, right? And he's just going to go in more and more decks. That's always going to be the case. Teleportation Circle was in my top 10 because obviously it goes in a lot of blinking things, and also does the artifact, which makes it unique for this. Other than Conjurer's Closet. Obviously it's doing the Conjurer's Closet Thassa Deep Dwelling effect in mono white, which is important, but also it does artifacts, which those other ones do not. Guardian of Faith, I believe I had number 1 from this set. I just like the protection stuff. And phasing, right? Phasing is just the best way to protect your stuff. I put this guy in like 4 or 5 decks as soon as it came out because I love protecting my board. I hate being blown out. Phasing is the best way to do it, and it works extra good against Cyclonic Rift, which everyone hates, because you're going to cast this, phase out all your creatures, and then the Cyclonic Rift will resolve and bounce your Commander of Faith back to your hand, so then you can use it again. Just fantastic. I'm 16,000 decks. That's it. Weird. Like, this is one of the best, and it's a creature, right? It's stapled on a creature. I mean, it's not as good as Teferi's Protection, but it's really, really good. Surprised this isn't in more decks. It's also a spirit, so and a knight. So you'd think it would go in all the knight tribal and spirit tribal decks as well. Uh, Druid class. People really like playing extra lands every turn, right? So when a land enters the battlefield. Yeah, so this goes in every landfall deck, obviously. Grazilax is in a lot of decks. There you go. See, I kind of had a feeling that he would go in, like I said, the ninja decks he fits great in. A lot of any of those attacky, I'm trying to get in for damage with my creatures decks. He works great in because he gets you the card draw, but also if your opponent blocks something that you don't want to die, you can return it to your hand. You find some prisoners. This is an interesting one. This is one that I totally flew under the radar for me, and I can't. I maybe the Command Zone guys were talking about this, and I was like, hey, yeah, that's actually not bad. I like modal cards. 2 mana to destroy an artifact is not great, obviously. However, it's nice to have that option on there because you're always going to want to do it. Exile the top 3 cards of target opponent's library. Choose one of them. Till end of your next turn, you may play that card. So this is impulse draw for your opponents, though. And what's interesting about this, and what I think they brought up when I watched them talk about it on their video, was you can, if your opponent tutors at the top of their library, you can cast this before they can draw into the card and exile whatever the win con or important card they're looking for. You can exile it so they can't get it. So that's another neat way to use this card. Prosperous Innkeeper, hey? Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So this is just a really bad Soul Warden, or Essence Warden, right? If you want a green version, Essence Warden is better. But still, and it gives you the treasure token, which I'm sure a lot of people are excited about. Yeah, okay. Man, I'm trying to think if I've seen this in a Commander game. Maybe. Definitely not that much. I mean, we're pretty low here. Like, if I was evaluating the set, like 37,000 is the most popular card from the entire set, and it's not a very impactful card. So the 99 here is not very impactful at all. And as I talked about, I didn't think that's why I only had a top 10 from this set and not a top 20, right? I always do top 10s of sets that I think are really good, or not so good for Commander, and top 20s of sets that I think are a lot better. And as you can see, there's just not a lot of really impactful cards here at all. Moonblessed Cleric, one that I missed and did on my cards that I missed from the year, is, in my opinion, one of the most impactful cards because it's tutor enchantment, right? Enchantment tutor. You're tutoring for enchantments, which of course is really important in the format. There's lots of decks that want to be doing that, right? So ultimately, that to me, like Moonblessed Cleric is a card that you're always going to be putting in decks until the end of time. Zorn is the other one, right? Zorn, Teleportation Circle, Guardian of Faith. Those are the 4 cards that I think are probably the most impactful from the set that you're just going to see again and again and again until the end of time. So anyway, let's move on quickly to Forgotten Realms Commander, which I gotta speed things up here because this is going long. But Prosper, as I've talked about quite a bit already on my channel, I talked about it most recently in the Commanders. I'm just shocked how popular this are. This guy's like top 10 in the entire format. And again, yes, he is. I know people really like what he's doing. By the way, there's another Rakdos commander that's doing treasures. So, but it's a Rakdos commander. I can't believe, like, there has never been a top 10 Rakdos commander, I don't think, in the history of the format. Just because Rakdos aren't super popular it's not a super popular color combination in the format, right? And I'm not going to go into Prosper again. I've talked about it a ton. One of the most popular obviously the most popular from the set. If you combine if you look at all the Forgotten Realms stuff, and in number 2, and if I go back, so what was Volo at? 38.6. Yeah, this 8,000, like far and away. 38. So Sephiroth is about the same as Volo, just a little bit more popular. And again, there's another one I talked about that I was surprised about. In fact, the top 3 from this set were all on my shocking commanders video because I was surprised how popular they are. Sephiroth, because it was a dungeon commander, right? This is the only one. This is the only dungeon commander that was actually really popular. And it was because, again, I don't think people cared about venturing into the dungeon. They didn't care about that. It was just really, really easy to get creature cards into your graveyard from anywhere on everyone's turn, and then when you complete a dungeon, now we actually have a good payoff, right? This is a payoff that's actually worth building a deck around. That's why people built around this deck, because, hey, I can discard a giant creature into my graveyard like an Avacyn, and then when I complete a dungeon, I can just put it directly into play. So the payoff there was worth it, right? That's where they sort of went wrong with the other commanders, where, okay, venturing into the dungeon, it takes a while, right? You got to venture, you got to get through all those different rooms, and then when you complete it, what do I get? I get a 2/2 wolf. Wah wah, right? What's like huge difference here? 2/2 wolf token, or I get to put an Avacyn directly into play, right? So Gallia was another one that I was kind of surprised about. I mean, yeah, you're looking at the top card of your library. People like playing off the top of their library. I guess we have not seen Bant or an equipment before, so it was going a little bit out of the usual color stuff. I mean, certainly people are sick and tired of Boros or equipment, that's for sure. They don't need to make any of those commanders ever again. Min Wily Illusionist was number 2. I had this number 2 from the set. I love this commander. Again, there's just so much going on here. You're doing the draw your second card each turn. So you're doing that. So that's something you got to build around. You're doing Illusion Tribal, so that's something you got to build around. You are doing, you want your illusions to die. And then you're putting permanent cards from your hand into play. So like when I built this deck, this is a deck that I was going after. I ended up not actually putting it together in paper. You need permanence in your hand all the time. You don't want to lose that value when someone board wipes, right? So you can't just fill your, like you would in a mono blue deck. And this is what I found most interesting about it. You don't want to just fill your hand like with counter spells and draw spell. All these instants of sorceries are useless to you. So you want to, as much as possible, do your card draw and all that stuff in permanent form so that you can get this trigger as much as possible, right? That's where the value's at. I love dice triggers because my opponent board wipes. It's okay. I got a bunch of value out of that happening, right? 2,000 decks, though. Pretty good. Verandis, yeah, okay. I mean, 1,800 decks is quite a bit. I have not played against this one myself. It is, I thought it was very interesting. Again, I kind of like the way they did it. We do have the dice rolling thing. You didn't need to do that at all. You didn't need to, whenever you roll it one more dice, it deals 1 damage to itself. Like, that's almost a bad thing. It's probably easier just to have other ways, like, again, the Pyrohemia or the whatever, to crank out those dragons. Very, like, you got a Pyrohemia, you just deal 3 damage to your commander, and then on your opponent's end step, and then on your turn you untap with 3 5/4 red and green dragons. Yeah, just not surprised at all where this guy sits. I thought Wolfgar was going to be more popular though, just because of the attack trigger thing. And as we saw again on my shocking commanders video, Ishin just sort of trumped this guy right out of the sky, right? You had this guy come out last summer, and then I think he got probably pretty popular for a little while because we had never seen the attack trigger thing before. This is actually an idea I had come up with for a commander. And then Ishin comes out, and it's like, okay, everyone's like, okay, see you, Wolfgar. I'm just going to do the attack trigger thing even better now. So I'm actually surprised this guy hasn't completely fallen off in popularity. It's a little different, but I would say Ishin is just better almost all around, with the exception that you don't have green. That's about it. Klauth has over 1,000 decks. That is really surprising. It's a 7 mana commander, right? And for me, 7 is like, okay, I better be getting some huge payoff for 7. It does have haste, so you can attack with it right away, right? And of course, it has an attack trigger. When it attacks, add X mana of any combination of colors where X is the total power of attacking creatures. Spend this mana only to cast spells. Until in turn, you don't lose this mana. So, your commander's sort of a ritual effect, so that you can then cast stuff on your next. You know, it's a tad boring. I'm surprised this has over 1,000 decks. It's a tad boring. I'm just getting a bunch of mana that I can then on my next turn cast a big spell, or my next main phase cast a big spell with, or cast I guess a Genesis Wave or something. Yeah, maybe it is a little bit of a Crewfix deck, a Gruul Crewfix deck, where you are just big mana, big. Let's go with the big mana, the Genesis Wave type plays, right? So I imagine there's a lot of people there. Man, 1,000 decks for this though, wow. Karazakar, I had this guy at like number 3, I think. I thought he was very interesting, and again, because of what he's doing. I mean, for me, I look at Karazakar and I look at Prosper and I'm like, Karazakar looks way more interesting to me. Prosper looks boring. I mean, you're doing impulse draw and you're creating treasure tokens. That to me that seems boring. This guy is super interesting. Whenever you attack a player, tap target creature that player controls and goad it. And I don't love goad, but I like the way they did it here. So you're tapping your opponent's creatures, you're goading them, and then whenever an opponent attacks, and the two abilities don't have to play into each other. They play into each other, but they don't have to rely on each other. The second ability is just whenever an opponent attacks another one of your opponents, it doesn't have to be the goad, right? You and the attacking player each draw a card and lose a life. So you're getting card draw. This is a very political deck, which I like. You're enticing your opponents to attack each other, which is interesting. So it is, yeah, you are goading, but at the same time, you don't have to do any goading at all. You can just sit there, just like with Brina, and just, hey, you want to draw a card? Attack one of my opponents, and I'll let you draw a card. So you can just sit there and watch your opponents kill each other. I thought it was very interesting. Storvald, Frost Giant Jarl. This guy I didn't talk about at all. I just, again, 7 mana. I wish this guy wasn't 7 mana because we got some really interesting abilities here. Ward 3, which I love ward or hexproof or anything like that on my commander, so it's hard to get off the table. Other creatures you control have Ward 3. That's obviously fantastic as well. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you can turn a creature into a 7/7 or into a 1/1. Again, there's just so many ways you can build around that. I think that's super interesting. 7 mana, though. I just don't like that I have to wait so long before I can get going. That's the part I don't love about this guy. He's very interesting, though. So right where you would expect, right? 500, sort of in the middle. By the way, all of these commanders, there really is. There's only 2 that are kind of, I would say, unpopular. All the rest are pretty good. But yeah, this guy is a combination of, I got a really expensive commander, which makes him less popular, but I got a lot of interesting things I could build around, which makes him more popular. So he's about where I would put him. Nihilure, same thing, which I did on my Underwhelming Commander series, doing a bunch of stuff that people like, stealing my opponent's stuff and all that good stuff. So that gives him sort of a plus column. But then the downside is, I got to tap my creatures in order to get my opponent's creatures. And if you watch my Underwhelming Commanders video on this, it was tough. I started building this guy and I thought he was super interesting, but I started building him and I'm like, oh man, there's so much to build around here that it gets complicated. You have to have creatures in play in order for your commander's ability to work. You can also steal your opponent's creatures in other ways, because whenever you attack with a creature an opponent owns, you gain 2 life and that player loses 2 life. So you're doing that as well. You're in a life gain theme because you're gaining life. You get that life gain trigger all the time. There's a lot to build around there. It was really tough for me to cram all that into one deck. Definitely an interesting commander. Then we got Caddy Bree and we got Lorcan Warlock Collector. Not super, like, what I didn't like, I did a Caddy Bree deck for one of my was it a deck doctor for one of my patrons? What I didn't like about it, so when Caddy Bree of Mithril Hall attacks, put a +1 counter on for each equipment attached to it. So in the equipment theme here, so I got to do equipment. I don't have to, but it's your commander's ability is not going to be great if you don't. Remove all +1/+1 counters from Caddy Bree. It deals X damage to target attacking or blocking creature an opponent controls, where X is the number of counters removed this way. I didn't like that you had to remove all counters. This ability would have been a lot better if you could just remove any number of counters, right? So if I have 10 counters on my commander and I want to kill a creature that's a 2/2, blocking or attacking, I have to remove all 10 counters in order to deal I only need to deal 2 damage, but I have to deal all the damage. I didn't like that. The remove all counters part really, really sort of puts you in a box where, okay, I don't want to pile a bunch of counters on my commander now, because if I do, as soon as I use that ability, they're all gone. For me, I would almost, there's a lot of ways you can go with this commander, which is kind of makes it interesting. Obviously giving your commander death touch so that you don't really need to do all you need is the 1 counter. Just 1 counter, remove the 1 counter and, destroy or kill an attacking or blocking creature might be the better way to go with it, rather than I'm trying to piling counters on your commander. I don't know if it's a great way to go with it, because you have to, as soon as you activate that ability, they're all gone. Right? I don't like that. And Lorcan, again, a 7 mana commander that, it's got a good ability. Whenever creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may pay life equal to its mana value. If you do, I thought this guy would be a little more popular. But yeah, again, 7 mana, that's pricey. to sit there and do nothing for 7 turns before you can get your commander out. All right, let's quickly look at the 99 cards here. And Grim Hireling, which is, again, one that I passed over. This is one that I missed. People like those treasure tokens. So what I like about it, and I'm not like I'm not going to think about treasure tokens like a lot of other people are. They're good. What I like about it, it is a connect or a deal damage payoff in mono black, and you don't have a lot. Like Night Dealings is one that I like to use a lot if I'm in a black theme. Blue and green have lots of those. If your creatures connect, you get a payoff, right? Like a Coastal Piracy or something like that. Black doesn't have a ton, and it's nice to have another one for black if you're in a theme where, like, I'm going to put this in a treasure token theme, and I'm going to put it in a theme where I'm already getting in for damage, like that Krydle deck, right? If I'm in a Krydle deck, there you go. You're going to be connecting all the time, so having those payoffs for that is great. Wow, Clouth, like, this is how you know that a set isn't a great commander set. Okay, this is the actual commander set, by the way. When a commander is the second most popular card, and it's a 2-color commander. This is a 2-color commander, which means it can only go in decks that are red and green, and it is the second most popular card from the set in the 99. That's how you know you don't have a great commander set, right? Mantle of the Ancients. Oh yeah, I guess that's a really good one in an equipment theme. And then we get down to Druid of Purification and Robostars and Druid of Purification and Grim Hireling those are the 3 best cards from the set. I missed all of them. I mean, I guess I was so bummed out about this set and I didn't really love it that I was like, I didn't really pay that much attention. Maybe, I mean, that's my bad. I should be a little more diligent when it comes to these things. The 3 best cards from and I'll take a quick look. Yeah, I mean, Clout's Will's pretty good too. That's not bad. Another one I missed. But I think for sure the 3 best cards from the set in the 99 are Grim Hireling, Druid of Purification, and Robostars, which I missed all 3 when I reviewed the set. And those are 3 really good cards. Druid of Purification is fantastic, especially if you can like recur it, blink it, whatever. Robostars, it's a really great way to protect your commander, right? Equipped creature phases out. That's fantastic. It only has equip 1. Just being able to phase out your commander whenever you want. This is really one of the best ways out there to repeatedly protect your commander if you're worried about it getting removed. It could really go in just about any deck. Yeah, that's it. That is it. I'm going to stop there. This video's gone really long. There's so much to talk about, especially because you have a set that is a pretty heavy on the commander side. Like they went pretty heavy with the commander here in this set, even though it was, technically a standard set. So there was a lot to talk about. Overall, it not a ton of big surprises. It really did. And again, this is a set that it was a little divisive, maybe because there was a lot of things people didn't like. I didn't love the dice rolling. I didn't love the dungeons right out of the gate. That again sort of bummed me out about the set to the point where I didn't really pay as much attention to it as maybe I should have. And again, I tried not, and then when they did Baldur's Gate, I tried not to do that. I was like, okay, try not to get too bummed out. And I ended up, getting into it and talking more about the backgrounds and the best cards from the set. And I did a couple deck techs. I did a little bit more than I did with Forgotten Realms. And again, might want to go back and look at some of these, right? If there are some commanders that you were interested from this set that you maybe was like, there's not enough support there, dice wise or dungeon wise, or even some of the cards that deal with dungeons and dice, might want to revisit it and go back now that we've had Baldur's Gate and a lot of the great cards come out from that set that will fit in with what you're doing here. I think they even have some more like dungeon and dice commanders that you can sort of mix and match and go like with the backgrounds, right? So might be a set you might want to revisit. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.